Living in Sunnyside Estates wasn't my ideal choice at first, but the location worked perfectly for my daily commute. And the neighborhood's walking trails were just right for Maverick. My service dog, Maverick, is a striking golden retriever who helps me manage episodes of post-traumatic stress disorder stemming from my military service overseas. He is impeccably trained, always wears his service vest when we're out, and responds flawlessly to commands. I know the Americans with disabilities act like the back of my hand, an essential reality when your independence relies on a service animal. But I never imagined I'd end up quoting federal law to the president of my homeowners association the first time. I met Karen Whitfield. She was marching down the sidewalk with a clipboard in hand and a scowl that looked permanently carved into her face. She introduced herself as the HOA president in a tone that made it clear I was supposed to be impressed. "I don't recall approving a dog in this community," she said, eyeing Maverick with suspicion. Even though he was sitting motionless and calm at my side, I calmly explained that Maverick was not a pet, but a certified service animal, and as such, he was exempt from pet restrictions under federal law. She huffed, muttered something about people always finding loopholes, and walked off. I should have taken that moment as a warning. Over the next several weeks, I received a series of notices. One claimed my grass was an inch too tall. Another said my mailbox was painted the wrong shade of black. One more cited my garbage bin being visible from the curb for roughly 45 minutes after pickup. Each letter came signed with Karen's overly elaborate signature, complete with a smiley face that somehow felt more hostile than cheerful. I complied with each demand, hoping to avoid conflict, but I had a sinking feeling these petty violations were just the beginning. My suspicion was confirmed at the next HOA meeting. Karen proposed a new rule requiring all animals, including service animals, to be registered with the board and wear identification tags approved by the HOA. I raised my hand and mentioned that such a rule would conflict with the Americans with Disabilities Act. She cut me off mid-sentence and insisted that federal law doesn't override community standards. A few neighbors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but none spoke up. After the meeting, Karen cornered me outside and leaned in close. "If you want to be difficult," she whispered, her breath reeking of stale coffee and aggression, it can be difficult too." The following weekend, I was enjoying a quiet morning on my porch with Maverick resting by my feet. I had just unfolded the newspaper when I noticed a shadow crossing the lawn. Karen stood at the edge of my yard wearing her usual khaki shorts and tucked-in polo, gripping a spray bottle. "Your dog is in violation of the new ordinance. He isn't wearing the required HOA tag," she declared, her voice loud enough to attract the attention of the neighbors. I calmly reminded her, again, that Maverick was a federally protected service dog and that the HOA had no legal authority to impose identification rules on him. I also pointed out that her proposed rule hadn't even gone into effect yet. Her face turned an alarming shade of red. "I'm tired of you military types thinking you're above the rules," she snapped, stepping into my yard. "If you won't comply, I'll take care of it myself." Before I could react, she raised the spray bottle and sprayed Maverick directly in the face with an unknown liquid. He let out a sharp yelp and stumbled back, pawing at his eyes. I leapt up immediately, stepped between them, and demanded to know what she had just used. "Just a bit of vinegar and water," she replied with a smirk. "It won't hurt him, maybe. Now he'll learn to respect authority." I was absolutely furious. But years of military training had taught me to control my emotions in the heat of the moment. I brought Maverick inside, rinsed his eyes, and carefully monitored him until I was sure there was no lasting harm. Once I was certain he was comfortable again, I picked up the phone and dialed the police. When the dispatcher answered, I explained that someone had attacked my service dog, a serious federal offense. I gave them all the necessary details, and they confirmed that officers would be dispatched immediately. Roughly 20 minutes later, 2 officers knocked on my door. I explained everything, showed them Maverick's official service documentation, and pointed out Karen's house across the street. One officer remained with me to take my full statement, while the other went to speak with Karen. From my window, I watched her gesturing wildly, her face twisted in outrage. but the officer listening to her didn't appear convinced. When they returned, the officers informed me that Karen had confessed to spraying Maverick, claiming she was simply enforcing HOA rules. However, they told her and me that interfering with a service animal is indeed a federal crime under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Not only that, but her actions also qualified as animal cruelty under state law. They placed her under arrest on the spot and asked if I intended to press charges. Without hesitation, I agreed. Karen was led to the police car in handcuffs, still yelling about how she would have me removed from the neighborhood and claiming the HOA would turn against me. But as neighbors stepped outside to witness the commotion, I overheard one whisper, "She's finally gone too far." Another neighbor came up to me afterward, apologizing for not speaking up sooner. "We've all been scared of her," she admitted, glancing down at Maverick, who had returned to his calm, alert demeanor. Surprisingly, the legal process moved quickly. Karen faced charges of interfering with a service animal, animal cruelty, and harassment. At her initial hearing, she arrived in high-end clothes with a pricey lawyer in tow. But as the evidence mounted, even her attorney looked visibly uncomfortable. The judge was firm and unimpressed, stating that community rules never override federal protections, especially those involving disability accommodations. Meanwhile, the HOA called an emergency meeting. I attended with Maverick by my side. Time. Nearly every homeowner showed up. The HOA's vice president stood and called for a vote of no confidence, citing Karen's reckless behavior and the legal risk she had brought upon the neighborhood. The vote was unanimous. Karen was officially removed from the board. Someone had even printed new placards for the board members, and her name had already been removed. Eventually, Karen accepted a plea deal. She admitted guilt to a lesser charge. In exchange for avoiding a lengthier sentence, the court fined her $5,000, ordered her to complete 200 hours of community service at a local animal shelter, and mandated she attend disability rights education courses. She also served 30 days in county jail. As the sentence was read aloud, Karen cycled through emotions, disbelief, rage, and finally, a stunned realization of the gravity of what she had done. "I was just enforcing the rules," she muttered. But the judge responded sternly. "The most important rule, Miss Whitfield, is to respect the law of the land, which protects service animals and those who depend on them." Our eyes met as she was led away. The usual arrogance that defined her was gone, replaced by something far more unfamiliar. Humility, I thought. I saw her mouth the words, "This isn't over," but we both knew the truth. Maverick sat beside me, composed and attentive, the model of what a service dog should be. I reached down and scratched gently behind his ears. He leaned into my hand, a simple gesture of loyalty and strength. Together, we had endured more than we expected. But we had also stood our ground, and the law had done what it was meant to do.